definitely something to reading a book at the right time. Lately, just a lot of the books I've been reading by C.S. Lewis and Chesterton and um, George MacDonald, but also others. I've just been getting so much out of them because I think it's definitely hitting me at the right season of life, for one thing. But I definitely think there's also just as much to saying it's important not only when we read a book, but almost more so how we read a book. So, like, as an example, I used to read, I'd read C.S. Lewis Screw Tape Letters before, quite a bit of years ago, and I did get things out of it for sure, but I feel like I'm getting so much more out of it now. And one of the reasons is I had this notion that I should always be looking to get something out of it, something, some kind of advanced spiritual truth. And instead of just letting the simple and elementary, or dare I say, obvious truths to sink in. And so I think it's important as we read to read it in the correct way. Let it come and don't be afraid, but actually, all the more so, look for the elementary and the simple, which in the end I think are the most powerful and the most brilliant of all truths. That's just I mean that's the way Christianity is. And I think it boils down to writing. So this is very much a important step. I think as a younger writer, I was always trying to add in those advanced spiritual truths, trying to have that one-up wisdom that would just awe everybody that reads. But in my own reading experience, the things that have stuck with me the most powerfully and have affected me the deepest and most personally are those simple, basic truths, the elementary. So that's something I definitely want to be getting better at and learning and allowing myself to do, is not to try and get so deep that I just outsmart myself as I write.
Hi, welcome to Caribou. Do you have a first account with us?
Yes, I do.
What's the phone number? Perfect. What can I get started for you today?
Can I get a medium hot latte?
Perfect. Anything else to go with that?
That'll be it.
6 at the window, please.
All right, thank you.
Of course.
For some reason, I always like to take my sunglasses off when I go through a drive-through. Otherwise, I feel like I'm way too expressionless. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
That's
I'm
good.
so sorry.
No, you're good.
Do you have a good surface to fix it?
Yes, I do. No
There
problem.
you are.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
good rest of your day.
You too. Compliments of my sister Katie. That's why I get lunch every day. Greatly appreciated. Otherwise, I would be eating junk or nothing at all. So, I named this channel Authentic Story Making. I feel like I've said this before, but not because I've arrived and I'm trying to sell myself as being a amazing and authentic story maker, but it's instead the goal of this channel and the goal of my writing that will probably extend long past this channel to achieve this. And maybe it's never going to be this perfect ultimate goal, but it's going to be a continual growing. Because I don't know if it's quite like this end goal of this ultimate perfect book or story. I think it's very much just a continual growing and an increasing in a more authentic and better story every time I write a book. Every time I read a book, get closer and closer and better and more authentic. And I want to be able to write those kind of stories. So I guess what I'm trying to say is every time I read a book, every time I write a book, I want to get closer and better. But one of the things I was thinking about recently that stands out to me, a takeaway, is just the importance of adding a dash of humor into certain moments in a story that are maybe dark or a struggle or a moment of pain or even sorrow. And just being able to, in the right way, add a dash of humor, very much like a spark that lighting that dark circumstance. Because what it does, if done correctly, will actually put that difficulty, that trial, the sorrow, the anguish, whatever it is, in its proper place. It doesn't in any way belittle it, because the wrong way to do it is like, oh, laugh it off. That was a bummer, but laugh it off. It belittles the trial itself. But true right humor can acknowledge the dark thing, the dark time, but also put it in its proper place. In other words, it doesn't make that difficult thing more than it really is. It doesn't make that the all-consuming heaviness. Basically, there can be that spark of humor because there is hope beyond that darkness. That's one little thing I was thinking of. Wanted to try and incorporate better into my stories. I want to write stories that fill people with hope and inspiration. And I feel like all kinds of books serve different purposes. But in general, I feel like fantasy fiction is very powerful when it isn't too weighty, but it offers a hope through trials. This reminds me of a quote by G.K. Chesterton that I've always loved. He said, "Fairy tales do not tell children the dragons exist. Children already know that dragons exist. Fairy tales tell children the dragons can be killed." So what we're going to go into now is a new map. I'd like to sketch this out so that I can follow along as I'm writing, because it covers the area of the first several chapters of my new story. So the first island that I'm starting on here is the smaller of the two. This one, known as Artalda, is also called the Old Isle. It is very much a shepherd and herd kind of community. It's falling behind the larger island in the way of advancement technologically, but the inhabitants of this island prefer that. They look down upon the larger island very much, as their worldview is very religious and even very much based on a form of Christianity, but it over time has been having influences of paganism. This is the island where our main character of the story is originally from, where he grew up, and the background that shaped a little bit of who he is and why he has come to this larger island that I'm now starting on. This island is the city-state of Barracoons, and I developed that the languages I'm working on, it comes out of the Basque influence, and it is inspired by the word for innovation. As suggested, this is the island that is all about advancement, technologically, politically, but not very much religiously.
So that is where a lot of their differences come in between this city-state of Barracoons and the older Isle Artalda. This is a larger island, and the entire island is developed. It is all city. There are several different quarters within the city. Due to this, the buildings are pretty much across the board very tall, full of floors, and the streets are pretty narrow. There are actually places where there can be whole streets within one giant building. And thus within that, along those streets, there could be shops or apartments or offices or whatever. There are several older sections of Barracoons that have some leftover architecture that is very Gothic in its style. And what I'm doing here is just plotting out the basic borders for some of the different quarters and sections of the city. This first one is the industrial quarter. Now this is where the main first chapters take place. Our main character is recently employed here at what is known as the Advanced Institute. I'm just adding in South Beach right here because there's a reference to it in the beginning chapters that do play a little bit of a interesting piece. Here are the older slums, the lower dregs of the city, and up here is the gated quarter. So this is where all the wealthy have congregated. The gated quarter, very much like Athens in its worldview. So basically believing that the purpose of life is to gain as much enjoyment and wealth as possible, and obviously the industrial quarter, very scientific in its worldview. So that's the map. I just wanted to get it out on paper just to help visualize and just to have it start coming together a little more. It may change, it may morph, it may have things added to it. Most definitely it will have things added to it. But that is it for now. This really cool parchment paper that I was able to draw it on was a Christmas gift last year from my youngest brother Ian. So that is going to do it for this video. I just want to start being a little more consistent with putting them out regularly. I aim for about Monday to Tuesday every week now. Topically, they're going to be very different every week depending on what I feel inspired for, what I have energy for. But this is the 11th installment in my writing vlogs. I'm going to keep those going. So my manuscript is now just over 15,000 words, which is it's getting along there. It's definitely still not going quite as fast as I had hoped, but in the end, that is the way it goes. I mean, I only have so much time dividing between work, family, church, friends, and writing, reading. I want to do the things that are in my life well instead of just focusing all in on one thing. So I can only go at such a pace for writing, but again, I want it to be quality over quantity. So my book is now available on my Etsy shop, which is in the description below, but it is also available on Amazon Prime along with my dad's book. So those resources are down below. You can check them out, comment, whatever. But we will see you next week. Take care.